Handling resentment is tough, but if you're going to be successful, you got to overcome it. Welcome to McBain Moments. I was doing some research because I know that in my life, throughout my life, I've run into situations that has caused long-standing resentment against people that maybe I should be willing to let go of at this point in my life. And for almost a week, I had this kind of cloud where all I could really think of, there was a lot of negative thoughts, a lot of negativity. I couldn't get out of this rut where I was constantly in the negative. And while I'm still fighting it right now, I'm more successful now because I took some time to analyze it. And part of that analysis was actually writing a blog post about it. It posted yesterday at McBainmanor.com. But I wanted to do the research, what is the source of resentment? Because I always thought resentment was just anger. It was just long-standing, slow-burning, simmering anger. It was the coals of anger. And if you put a poker to it, it would flare back up. And that's not entirely untrue, but it's really only part of the story. And so I did some research into it, and I dug through it a little bit, and I unpacked it and tried to figure out, okay, I'm feeling resentment, and I'm feeling anger, and I'm feeling all of these emotions that I have yet to unpack in myself. And at 35, that's not really a good place to be, because at this point in my life, I've gotten the majority of the mess that I made of myself in my 20s back together again, and I have spent the time to rebuild that and kind of fit all the pieces where they're supposed to go. But resentment can very quickly break that apart, and in fact, I think resentment might be one of the most dangerous emotional states that we could be in. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think there's a person out there that doesn't resent something or someone in their life. So there's that. So I unpacked it a little bit and I thought about, okay, so how does anger turn into resentment? And then I'm doing the reading and I'm doing the research, and mostly Wikipedia, because that's a really easy resource to get when you don't have a lot of time. Even though I wouldn't necessarily call it the most scholarly of resources, trying to get a hold of like a psychological journal, you're going to be spending $200-$300 for it. I am only looking for one article that might be 3 to 5 years old. So I'm looking at it, and apparently resentment isn't just anger, it's also fear and disappointment. So in order to be resentful, you have to have some sort of anger toward a person. You have to fear something about them, and you have to be disappointed in some aspect of the relationship. And so I thought about it, and I thought back, and I said, yeah, I can see where the anger comes in. That's pretty easy. And I'm like, yeah, I can see where the fear comes in. And that's not nearly as difficult to grasp on. And then it was the disappointment that really got me. It's like, what am I disappointed in? What about that relationship am I disappointed in? And it occurred to me that disappointment didn't come from the actions in the relationship. It came from the results. What I was looking for in it, I hadn't gotten. And so I was disappointed from the standpoint of where I was sitting in that relationship. And this isn't something that is easy to let go of, because the people in question aren't going to change. So overcoming that is going to be difficult. But what it comes down to is, what's the most important thing? And right now, the most important thing is understanding and grasping the fact that there is resentment and that I can't let it rule my life or my interactions. Because when you resent someone or something, and it can dominate your whole mindset, and negative mindsets will overtake positive mindsets very, very quickly. Negativity likes to get in and grab a hold of you and just hold on to you. And it's self-perpetuating. It's a negative feedback loop, and negative feedback loops work far more efficiently than positive feedback loops. So, and I think that's why depression is so common these days. And I'm not a psychologist, but I'd be willing to bet if I had to put money on anything, I would make a bet that the reason that depression is so prevalent is because negative feedback loops perpetuate themselves far more easily than positive feedback loops. And so just coming to that conclusion really kind of freed me to understand, okay, now that I know what I'm contending with a piece of human nature to where we will always try, whether by accident or design, to allow negative feedback loops to perpetuate themselves. How do we break out of the cycle and get out of that loop and start back on the upswing? Because positive feedback loops happen too. And, as good things go and they get better and you can let go of that negativity, that positive feedback loop is going to be beneficial to you. And eventually the resentment will kind of wither away. And that's what I really want to do, is you want to smother the resentment, smother the coals of resentment until they get no oxygen at all. And so there's no, there's always going to be some little bit of smoke in there, but maybe if you can smother it enough. And I'm not talking obscure it, understand, acknowledge, and then try to let go of or smother the resentment. Because that's really the only way you're ever going to overcome it. Or at least that's what I have come to the conclusion of, is the only way I'm going to overcome the resentment is to deliberately put it out, like you would deliberately put out a fire. And it's not necessarily easy, and it's something I'm still working on. And I'm sure that if you go back through your brain and you think about all the relationships in your life, whether it's with your parents or your siblings or your best friend or your spouse, your children even, you're going to find little coals of resentment. And the important part is one, you don't let it dominate the relationship. And two, and more importantly, you don't let it dominate your attitude. And so I would encourage you to take some time, do a journal exercise and write down, okay, this is the relationship I have with my father. And here are the things that I resent about the way I was brought up. And do the same thing for your mother, do the same thing for your spouse, do the same thing for your kids. And for the love of God, make sure it's a private journal. Because if it's read by someone, these raw emotions, people can be put off by it. And they may not understand it. You're trying to let it go and you're writing it down so you can expose it and you can read it and you can be like, okay, this is what I resent and now I need to figure out how to let this shit go. That's the most important thing. You're writing it down so you can face the fact that it's there. Take responsibility for the fact that you've got to find a way to overcome it. And then let it go. Maybe it would be worth putting it into a separate notebook and burning it afterward. So, I guess the takeaway here is take the time, unpack the emotions, and then work through them. Because that's how you're going to get through it. Good luck. This has been a McBain moment.